Hey, what's up, players? Chicago and I back again. We're going to do another video in our series called Intel Bytes, where I take some different things from cyber threat intelligence and privacy-related topics, and we discuss them in small, well, I say small, bite-sized nuggets, but the first video ended up going around 45 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep it pared down a little bit smaller so that this is more consumable for everybody out there in relation to cyber threat intel stuff. So today we're going to deal with some more stuff with privacy, and we're going to talk about VPNs. What are those? Virtual private networks. So in this case, if you are more along the lines of you don't want to be tracked as far as your search, as far as what you're doing online activity, whether it be, I won't get into whatever it may be, but whatever you may be doing, then the best way I can find currently for that anonymity would be using a VPN. Now, some people may say, well, what about Tor and things like that? I'm going to get into that in another video, but the short skinny of it is that if an ISP can see you logging in to the Tor network, in other words, communicating from your computer to a Tor node, then that will kind of flag them, and they'll probably, there's a lot of different sites that may ban you from accessing whatever page it may be based on the fact that they see that you're connecting to a known Tor node. So hiding that connection from your computer to Tor may be a better benefit if you're looking for more anonymity in that case. So VPN first, then Tor may be a better option in that case. But all in all, the VPN is kind of where it is, right? It's looking as if I'm coming, or my traffic is coming from a different location. Now, I found that in the past, I like to use some streaming media applications. Kodi is one of my favorites. And a lot of times I noticed that my ISP, from what I understood and from working in that industry, I used to install cable modems and all that kind of stuff for a company up north. I forgot the name of it. But anyways, I kind of understand the mindset of some of these ISPs where if it's a big community and everybody's streaming video, yes, you pay for a certain amount of bandwidth and you expect that certain amount of bandwidth, but there's a possibility that the ISPs may throttle some of your traffic in lieu of trying to make the traffic more available to people that just browse the web and don't do a bunch of video streaming. So they may prioritize somebody's web streaming over your video streaming, right? So if they can see your traffic, which ISPs can see your traffic, they're going to go ahead and say, hey, this guy's using video streaming right now. They may, I'm not saying that's 100% accurate, but from what I understand and from working in the industry, I believe they also throttle in big, large communities like that. Again, I could be wrong on that, but that's a possibility. And whatever you connect with a VPN before you do any streaming, like with Hulu or Netflix or whatever you may be using, then it won't be seen by the ISP because the ISP won't see your address and it won't be able to detect whether you're doing streaming video because, again, it may appear that as if you're coming from Hong Kong or wherever it may be, some other different location than where you really are. And in that case, they wouldn't know, hey, we don't know if he's streaming videos, so they're not going to throttle your connection in this case, more than likely, because of that. So when it also comes to if you're doing some browsing, maybe you're doing research as a cyber threat intel, and some of the search terms you're using is something that you need for investigative purposes, but they're actually the key trigger words that would trigger interest from the NSA or CIA or something to that effect. And you really don't want your searches being scrutinized because you're just doing research. You're not really nefarious. So a VPN in that case would also be great because, again, it doesn't appear as your connection from your location. So you basically use a client server concept here, and you connect to a VPN, and that VPN then will show that from your computer, the actual IP address is from whatever that VPN server is. That's the intent behind a VPN server, is to appear as if you're coming or browsing from a different location. Now, I've researched a few different types. I've tried a few different types of VPNs, and NordVPN has not paid me or endorsed anything on this video. I'm just going on my experience, and you guys can choose whatever you want, but I'm going to kind of give you the pros and cons of what I use in this case here. And there are some really good ones out there, that some things you have to kind of look for in a VPN provider. So I use NordVPN. I've been using it for quite some time. And there's a few reasons. So let me start with the first reason why. So you may not be familiar with this, and this may sound conspiratorial, but there's something they call 5 eyes, 9 eyes, and 14 eyes. And the idea of this is illegal spying. So we already know from the different NSA leaks and such that they're spying on, private citizens when they're not supposed to. So here's the scenario. Let's say United States cannot spy on its U.S. citizens, right? What if they got the UK to spy on us, and the UK gives that information to the NSA, CIA, FBI? In that case, it's kind of skirting around our laws, if you will, and they're using another one by proxy to actually spy on citizens. And then in return, the United States says, oh, UK, you're not allowed to spy on your citizens? We'll spy on them for you, and then we'll give you the data, right? That is where the 5 eyes came from. It was essentially first with the US and the UK, and then they added in some more countries. So in this particular case here, with the 5 eyes alliance, we have the 5 eyes, 9 eyes, and 14 eyes. And you can see here they get data by monitoring users' online activity. Well, how would they do that? Well, they get it from the ISP, right? I mean, the ISP can see all of your traffic. If you're connecting to the actual DNS server of your ISP, they can get that traffic in logs. Those are being logged, and the government can compel these industries to give information, right? Same with the VPN. If the VPN keeps logs of your activity, the government has in the past been able to compel some VPN servers and providers to give that information to them for their investigative or whatever purposes, the spy on U.S. citizens. So the first iteration of this was the US, the UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And this recently came to light, where are we in 2021 right now? So this came to light a couple years ago as far as Attorney General Barr investigating, and he was going to Australia, the UK, all these different locations, and it just happened to be this whole 5 eyes things, and that's where it kind of popped into the news media, that wording, and the people were like, what is this 5 eyes? What does that mean? Well, this is what it is. And the 9 eyes is essentially the same thing, just add more countries. And then the 14 eyes, same thing, just added more countries. So if you look at this list of countries, US, UK, Canada, New Zealand, all these different ones here, if your VPN provider has servers located in any of these locations, there is the possibility that these countries and these governments could compel that VPN server to log in case they say we don't log. And they could also compel them to give them the logs of the actual connections and such. And we don't want that. In this case here, whenever you look for a VPN provider, you want to make sure it's in a country that is out of the jurisdiction of any of these, including the actual partners as well. So like, for instance, here's some ones that are known to be close allies of this particular alliance. Okay, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and British Overseas Territories. So we need to keep these things in mind whenever we choose a VPN provider. For me, NordVPN is out of Panama. Panama is out of the jurisdiction out of that. Plus, they're actually moving into doing a lot more what they call co-locate servers, where they're actually running and managing and running their own hardware. Some VPN providers will go ahead and task a third party to provide the servers for them as far as their VPNs go. That, again, would lead to government compel them to do whatever. So if you are in if you are in a jurisdiction that's out of these, 5 eyes, 9 eyes, and 14 eyes, and you run your own servers and you manage all your own hardware, everything's in-house. Now, another thing that you want to check whenever you look for a VPN provider is, do they keep logs? Now, a lot of them may say they don't keep logs, but when I say logs, and this is kind of, when I say logs, we're not talking about operational logs for the actual server itself. We're talking about your traffic, because it's understandable that NordVPN or any of these other ones will have to have some kind of logs so they can monitor their own hardware. So if they ever get breached or whatever, they can get an alert saying, hey, somebody's breaking in, blah, blah, blah. I get that. That's not a big issue for me. That's server operational logs. What I'm talking about is logging your activity, your online searching. NordVPN says they do not. Now, can you take their word for it? Sure, I guess you could. Or what's better is that you look to see if there's a third party, such as PricewaterhouseCoopers in this case, that does annual audits. So if the VPN provider you choose by choice does annual audits, that's a good sign that this is a provider that you're probably looking to get hooked up with. In this case, Pricewater does do annual no logs audits, and it's found from the audit they officially verified that it is a no log service. So therefore we know, okay, awesome. Even if they were compelled, which they can't because they're in Panama and they're not in that jurisdiction, they don't store these logs. So it's really nothing for the government to take when they don't do it. In this particular case, another thing they do is when they talk about using RAM disk and keeping things in volatile RAM instead of on the hard drives. Because again, with hard drives, it's a lot easier to retrieve as opposed to a volatile RAM whenever you restart the machine, the server. Obviously the information that's in RAM will go away. In that case, that's one way that we can say, hey, even if somebody steals the server physically from Nord, they can't pull this information because again, it's in RAM, and then it's going to be wiped out of that as well. So it's pretty awesome there. And also, like I mentioned before, they're doing a lot of more self-owned servers, and that's a lot better for when the government comes knocking on your door trying to compel these third-party providers that provide servers to VPN providers, which a lot of them do. So yeah, pretty awesome stuff. They also included a bug bounty program, so that will give you a little bit more security or assurance that the servers themselves that hold the VPN, software or whatever, is not easily broken into because they've done a bug bounty to verify, all the web application stuff is up to snuff, and that's a good thing to have as well. So bug bounty programs, pretty awesome stuff on that. And they're not expensive. For me, I pay by the year, I believe. And it's cheaper, obviously, when you pay by that. But I do believe they do month by month. But I think it's like $11 a month, if I remember correct, 10 or $11. It's really not expensive. But everything I do online, as far as any type of sensitive things that I may do, I use NordVPN. Now, let me show you how easy it is here in this case. So NordVPN also has, and this one's an interesting one too, is it actually has a kill switch you can enable as well, which says that if any network disconnect happens or whatever on anything, or any kind of blip happens on your computer or whatever, if it disconnects the VPN, it will then obviously show your true IP address to whoever. In this case, you can have a kill switch that says, if the VPN does disconnect, I want you to disconnect my internet as well. Okay, so that's an interesting thing you can put into play if you really, really are serious about not having your IP address seen in this case here. They also do some specialized dedicated service just for P2P, and this would be things like BitTorrent. Now, BitTorrent in and of itself is not illegal, but it can be used for illegal content. But there's a lot of legal uses of BitTorrent, right? There's a lot of MMO clients that are so huge that the only real efficient way to do it is through BitTorrent, or if you download like Kali Linux ISO or whatever, usually you can get it through torrent. So there's plenty of legal uses for it. So if you decide to use BitTorrent, you want to start by connecting to these P2P servers, which will open up a lot more of the actual seeders and trackers I've noticed on my own case than it would through a normal, just regular VPN connection. So that one's pretty cool how they got that. And also the thing I was mentioning before about using Tor. Again, Tor does bring some anonymity, but your computer still has to connect initially to the Tor network. So that initial connection out there, they can see, hey, they're connecting to a Tor IP address. So we know they're using Tor. We're suspicious of them and cut them off or whatever they may do. So that's a pretty cool thing as well. So it's really easy. If I just want to set up, if I just do a quick connect on this, you'll see it waits for a second. Now, I don't actually have it set to do anything beyond where I live in Texas. So I keep it within Texas. Now, I live in Central Texas, but I don't live in Dallas. And a lot of times when I do connect without specifying the state, country, whatever, it will give me Dallas. But the first thing you need to do every single time, even when using Tor, is once you've connected to a VPN, always go to DNS Leak test.com. And the reason why is because there are certain ISPs out there that may force you to go through their DNS. Okay, I think that's wrong. I don't like that. It's called transparent proxying. And I know there's some that do it. Currently, my ISP does not do it from what I've found by searching for transparent proxy, specifically. But the intent is to force you, even though you may have OpenDNS or another DNS server set, they may force you to go through their DNS server. Therefore, they can track it and log it. Now, in this case, I don't live in Dallas. This is not my IP address. Therefore, I have good confidence to say that if anybody's viewing traffic from my location, they're going to believe it's from Dallas. Now, when you do a standard test, this will also give you DNS servers. In this case, I'm using Spectrum as my main ISP. Therefore, it would show up here as a Spectrum ISP. Okay, that's kind of where it would show if there was a leak going on. So it would say that it was the DNS servers for Spectrum, whatever one they use, it would show up here. Because it does not show up, and because it's showing the one in Dallas or whatever, this is an anonymized DNS server, so they're not able to actually see any of my traffic or tie my traffic back to me physically here with my account, which is pretty awesome. So you always want to do a DNS leak. As I mentioned, there's things, like I said, called transparent DNS proxy. So it says here, if you change your DNS settings to use an open DNS, which a lot of people do with Google and Cloudflare and things like that, expecting that your DNS traffic is no longer being sent to your ISP's DNS server, you may be surprised to find out they are using transparent DNS proxy. And then you can actually, you see here, it says if your ISP implements this, they essentially are forcing you, your request, they're forcing you to go to the ISP DNS server and not the one that you have for OpenDNS, and that way they can track you. Now, you can also do some tests for that as well. So you can say transparent proxy test, and you can verify if there's any proxy interception. I don't know if that's the right one. Let me see. Let me grab this one here. Start proxy check. Boom. So this one failed down here. I'm not really sure what that is, but I guess you'd have to be able to find out. But in this particular case, it appears that my ISP does not, or whatever the ISP that I'm connected to here, does not do any transparent proxy, and so we should be good to go. So again, there's plenty out there. Proton VPN is another good one that I've heard good things about that do very similar things to as Nord does, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're in Switzerland. I don't believe that's one of the jurisdictions in the Five Eyes or any of that stuff. So I think you're probably good to go on that one. So that's a recommendation I've heard before. But you always have to look to find out a few things. One, are they in the 5 Eyes, 9 Eyes, or 14 Eyes jurisdiction? Number two, do they willingly do a third-party audit annually to verify that they don't log? Third, make sure they don't log. And then from there, always, once you've connected, do a DNS leak test just to verify every single time that it is actually working, okay? So like I said, in my case, I like NordVPN. That's just me. You choose whatever you want to choose. Doesn't really matter. But in this case here, that is the awesomeness of using VPNs. And again, in a later video that I'll be doing, I'll be talking more about Tails and Tor and talking about that particular one. But do keep in mind that if you want ultimate anonymity or privacy, you may want to consider the VPN before it goes to the Tor node. It's overkill, but it is privacy related because they do see that and they do make decisions based on if they can see that you've connected to a Tor node. But I'll talk about that in a later video. So I hope you guys enjoyed this short little quick intel bite about VPNs. And till next time, peace out, players.